Already met with lots of folks all over this campus, not just to present to them what we're doing, but to ask them what they think we should be doing. How can Michigan emerge as a leader and a pioneer in sustainability education? And so that's really what we want to do here. And I'm really excited about sharing with you how we're going to do it and then getting feedback from you. Background, right? This is not only happening on our campus. Many of you have seen publications in recent years that have emerged in some pretty high-profile places, including journals like Journals of Record for Natural Science, Nature, Science. And they're with titles that start to conjure a playing field for higher education in which it begins to seem almost unethical to continue doing content delivery in the ways we've done historically, lecturing to rooms full of students. Some of the science, pretty large end science, that's emerging on these issues now indicates that lectures not only disadvantage women, but many other kinds of students, including non-traditional learners. And so it's time for us to take that really kind of a groundswell of information and rigorous study of why the ways we've been teaching science, among other things, might be wrong for the future of decision-making on scientific issues and environmental issues, and do something about it. So the why behind this is that, yes, okay, we need to get out of the pulpit, stop just putting PowerPoint at people, and we need to do something more engaged in order to help people learn better about complex issues. Also, we believe that case-based learning of a kind widely embraced by business schools, law schools, social work, medical learning, right? Backing into concepts and theories by putting them into a context where decisions have to be made is a great way to actually do a better job of making knowledge sticky, making people remember things that they've learned several years out. And we're starting, along with our colleagues at CRLT here at Michigan, to build ways of examining whether that's actually an assumption that holds up, right? So then the question is not just why should people change how they teach broadly in the American and international academy, but why should Michigan consider ourselves capable of becoming a pioneer of how to do that for environmental and sustainability fields? And I have 3 answers for you today. You probably have more for me. The first, of course, is that some of us here just got several $1 million, including Newt's project and our project, to rethink sustainability education right on the front end of these groundswells of calls for change. And that's exciting. We do have an opportunity to be out ahead of the pack of peer institutions and to come along with partners of ours, like some of you in this room, who are from peer institutions. And I want to underscore that some of our partners in this project, including the Social and Ecological Synthesis Center in College Park, Maryland, which is an NSF project, are really interested in why what we can do using Michigan's biostation and Michigan's campus as a crucible cannot and should not be limited to Michigan. It's about experiments that can transform how teaching happens much more broadly. Another reason is the CRLT, right? How to assess whether this is a good idea, both in terms of the student's experience of it and their learning outcomes from it over time, is the key to making this work and to becoming really solid leaders in a field of transformed sustainability learning. I want to invite all of you to think with your science head about not just what you would teach were you to be funded by our project, but how you might assess what you're teaching and what would be the things you'd want to know about how that teaching works. The biostation, of course, is another key reason why we can do this here in Michigan, because you do broaden our intellectual community so beautifully, but you also ground it in Michigan in a way that our own campus-based faculty don't always do well enough, and that we're working to help ourselves do better. So these are some of the why us issues. This is actually a video of Steve Yaffe talking from the biostation with footage of students doing a case about whether or not to hunt wolves in Michigan at last year's SNRE orientation. And what Steve would explain to you if I gave him the time here is that former students who had undergone orientation to our school at the biostation came back to him and said, we could do more with these issues. Why don't we make this like a case where we can break into groups and take different stakeholder perspectives, animal rights advocates, sportsmen, tribal administrations, DNR experts, and really get into it. And then step back from that and try to make policy for Michigan, see how hard that is, right? So they did it. And some of our team from the MSC production team captured a lot of that on video. And I will send you that link if any of you are interested in seeing it. It's a beautiful example of how our ideas about engaged learning have actually emerged from the Biostation historically. They have also, of course, emerged from an early generation of grants on this third century initiative. Some of the small grants that the Third Century Transforming Learning program, which funds our project, dispersed to SNRE faculty, bolstered our master's project learning experience, where students work with clients like NGOs or companies or extension agencies. In this case, you see a master's project had Professor Paige Fisher with students in the radio station studio here on campus, the student-run radio station, talking about the challenge of growing cherries in Michigan on a continued basis given climate volatility. And you can access it simply by clicking on that link and going to our digital media platform. Other small grants that preceded this large one included a grant to Dr. Michelle Zint and Inez Ibanez. Their work was trying to develop field-based learning modules about climate adaptation that could be taught not only to university students here in Ann Arbor, but also to middle school students in the Ann Arbor public school system. So I want to encourage you guys to think, too, about the opportunities this project and the Biostation grant may provide to both improve what we do as university educators, but also maybe create new forms of educational materials that are more adaptable from undergraduate to graduate levels, or from university levels to high school or middle school levels on key problems of our time, right? Energy, climate, food security. So that's part of what we're trying to do. And we're building on the early efforts of faculty in our school, but we're also now reaching out to faculty across campus and indeed to those of you on other campuses to join us in the basic goals of this program, which are listed here. You probably don't need me to read them for you, and many of them are already implicit in what I've said to you thus far. I would signal really most of all just the first one, which is this notion of team-based work to produce these cases. Teams that include professors as well as practitioners and students of various kinds, both undergraduate and graduate. Because that team-based production is so central to what we do, and we also believe that when people work in teams in this way to create new forms of curriculum, they become adept at using those new forms of curriculum as well. Creating a teaching guide makes you a much better teacher. So part of our theory of how to make this change isn't just to say to all our colleagues, well, like it or not, we're going to do some case-based teaching now. It's to ask people to join us in building them. So these are some of our goals. We believe that our innovative approach, as I mentioned before, which embeds evaluation mechanisms and a learning about how to do evaluation well, is crucial to the long-term success. But so are the team-based elements, and so is the online portal, which itself we are building in a modular way to allow students and teachers here at first, and eventually more broadly, to interrogate and update our cases in real time, rather than doing something like what, say, the Harvard Business School cases do, which is to offer you, if you buy a Harvard Business School case to teach strategy for corporate decision making, you can also now, for some of them, purchase a 2-page update, a kind of where are they now update, right? Because some of those cases are not new. And people would like to know what's happened since. We hope to do something more dynamic that can be kind of updated in more real time, that reflects the capacity of technology now to create dialogue that is, ongoing and not just a kind of much later update. We do this by producing cases that have a very unique structure. They are not just text PDFs. They are narrative segments. They do flow, at least in our conception of cases right now, such that you are entering into a dilemma for a decision maker. It might be the head of the Michigan DNR. Should we hunt wolves, for example? And you'll see that case is featured in the next few slides. But then we also enhance that text or story about a tough choice with multimedia edge notes and with an audio segment, maybe for those who aren't visual learners or don't do as well with reading and writing as primary modes of learning, right? So it's a more inclusive. We also build in engaged learning exercises, which to date have ranged from quantitative exercises to field-based exercises to stakeholder perspective role plays and so on. The overview is the place where students go to get an introduction to the case as a whole. Here is a look at our website. we haven't yet built our public-facing website. What this is a sort of prototype for our user experience website. We currently have 3, almost 4 cases complete and being used right now in graduate and undergraduate courses on this campus in a trial mode, okay? One of them is this wolf case, and that includes, for students who use it, an overview page, as well as the actual text of the case in which they're brought into the decision-making challenge and offered information that's relevant to that decision-making, and also the obstacles and conflicts implicit in that decision. The edge notes, as you can see, are actually around the core text, and they function through a particular kind of innovation that our students developed, which is underscored text, which leads you to the edge note. You can click on it, and when you do, it takes you not so much away from the text, but into a small body of knowledge. It might be a little bit more background on the organizations or the ecological systems in question, or it could be something about stakeholder perspectives or media. Each author of a case, and if any of you become one, I hope you'll think about it, have quite a bit of work to do to think about curating the information out there on your case and selecting the best possible. This is not just edutainment, right? In fact, for the cases on our student website now, we have gone through first, then a second, then a third, and a fourth batch of EdgeNote materials, rejecting some, keeping others, seeking better image quality, looking for a video clip that doesn't just give you the dominant narrative about a situation, right? We don't just want, sort of the Discovery Channel take on whatever is happening. We'd like something a little more interesting. And so the curational or production elements, right? You can produce your own video by filming your own conversations and work on an issue if you like, right? Give students a deeper dive and take them in. So the edge notes themselves, I think, are a really nice feature of the case, which enables people that wouldn't necessarily read a footnote and go find the article. And that's, I find those kinds of students scarcer and scarcer in my teaching, to dive in more deeply to an issue and come back to the case at hand. The podcast is an alternative to the text. It is a complement to the text. In the Wolf case, we have a really nice interview, actually, with Matt Kaufman, who teaches out in Laramie, Wyoming, talking about how the underlying ecology of fear theories that have animated wolf extirpation and wolf reintroduction approaches in Yellowstone are actually probably going to look different in the ecology textbooks of the next decade, right? And so what the podcast does is it takes some assumptions in theory and practice of today and ask students to think about why those very basic concepts might sound and look different in the future. So sometimes the podcast goes beyond the written case or takes students on a slightly more updated intellectual journey. The engaged learning exercises range even more widely than the multimedia edge notes and the audio do. At the moment, we have cases in development that include these kinds of engaged learning exercises. They range from building something to involving students in media production on an issue, to attempting a field method, to developing writing skills, applying quantitative cost-benefit and social cost-benefit analysis, then asking students, what would ecological cost-benefit analysis look like? How would you make that? It doesn't really exist yet, right? So those are the kinds of questions that the engaged learning asks students to do. And so we would ask you to think ahead of time, if you're interested in producing a case, about what would the engaged learning component look like. For many of you, it might be a field exercise. So then if you want to do a case, how do you do it? This is how it looks, right? I've answered the why, why do a case. I've answered the why us do cases, but now this is the how. You don't have to partner with a practitioner on the front end of your case, although from the bits I've heard of this morning's presentations, many of you have partners on the ground who would be ideal for this. People, certainly Nick Rio at Dartmouth is a great friend and a great example of someone who has rich links with tribal administrations and other kinds of actors in the Michigan natural resource landscape. So bring those folks in early, if you can, to conceptualize how to frame a case. Alternatively, if you think you know what would be the best teaching moment in your own research, you can consider incorporating practitioners as the case unfolds. But we would like to see a mix of students and professors and practitioners. And to incentivize that in our school, we're actually offering people a half-course teaching credit simply to develop a case. Just an idea to take back to wherever you may be working and teaching. I think that's harder to get. But that's our way of incentivizing faculty to produce enough of these things that we can start really seeing how they work. Why in the world would you, as faculty already struggling to incorporate the complexities of field research into your journey to promotion, tenure, and job security, why would you want to do this? One reason is that we'll fund you and your students fairly generously to do it, right? And we'd like to make it easy for you in that respect. Of the top level funding model we currently have, about $7,000 goes to students and to teachers. About $3,000 is reserved for the audio and visual production teamwork that finalizes the case. But that is great. It can underwrite travel to and from the biostation. It can underwrite all kinds of costs, equipment, et cetera. What do you need to know to do a good case? Give us your budget. Give us your idea. Other cases that are being drawn from something you've already published, but you'd like to make it a teaching case, might only cost $3,000 to do because we might just need to edit and incorporate audiovisual media, right? So there's a kind of range in the budgets that we're beginning to see for doing these things. And we do also have programs like third century collaborative platform programs that are partnering with us to do a stack of cases. We want to note this Biostation grant about which Newt will tell you this afternoon at 2:30, because we're still thinking about how what we offer can partner with what that project is offering and be enfolded in kind of course-based work. Our cases also are going to be published. And the way that's going to work is that we have partners in Hyderabad, India, where there's a very, very active center for audiovisual media incorporation in case-based teaching in the business school. Also on that faculty is a guy who edits this journal, World Development Perspectives, and he's interested in putting more ecological and environmental work into the world development footprint. The editor-in-chief of World Development is Arun Agrawal, a co-PI on this project with me. That journal lives here. World Development Perspectives is a spin-off journal, a relatively new one. The editor is Indian. He is someone who edited, until very recently, Conservation Letters and presided over the vastly improved impact factor of that journal. Now he's moved to World Development Perspectives because he wants to put environment more squarely into the development debates. And he'd like to publish things that are more audiovisually rich and more context-rich than the usual economic and policy pieces on world development. So he will take cases we produce and consider them and work with their authors to create a publication, a published decision case, which for you as faculty means that you have not only the currency of getting the work done, which is to say a few $1,000s for student support or for your own support, but also the symbolic currency, right? There's like an actual capital reason to do this, and there's a symbolic capital reason to do this. And we're trying to offer both of those incentives because we understand change is difficult, right? And it's hard. So that's something I wanted to point out. If you opt to do it, of course, all the resources here at the Michigan campus that we have are available to you to support you as you do it. If you decide you want to do a case, for example, on biofuel use from Michigan wetlands, well, let's go to the Ask With Media library experts and say, we're interested in biofuels. And they'll say, oh, really? Well, we have 42 videos or documentary films that touch on biofuels, but really these 4 are the best, in our view, as a staff who've reviewed our archive. They can guide you to materials that you might not yet know are out there about the topics you're working on, right? And that's just the start of a long list of resources here at this campus that would be fully available to you if you want to pursue something like this. Our partners on campus are evolving. We hope that many of you in dialogue with us might signal other partners to us. But they are all pretty excited about what we might be able to do here. And they're not our only partners. Our wider partners, we won't be having our first full advisory committee meeting with external partners until probably this summer. But some of them are really interesting. I mentioned CESINC earlier. Some of you may already work with these guys. They've been trying to push ecological case-based methods for quite some time, and they already have developed workshops trying to help ecology scholars use the case-based method and teach with the case-based method. So we'll be doing joint workshops. We're in discussions with them now, right? Bill Clark at Harvard has said, oh, I'm really interested in this too, and we have probably a commensurate amount of money that we could bring alongside what you guys are doing just to take published cases from the scientific literature and develop them into teaching cases. He'd like to do that in a way that's less about just a decision maker and more about methods and theories in complex systems analysis, coupled human natural systems analysis. So, we are not done raising funding for this. We are not done with making it as big as it needs to be, but we're starting small with individual cases in individual classes, looking at how they work. And that's where we are right now. We'd like to build in some of yours if you're interested. You can contact our team, you can contact myself or Arun, the co-Is, and we appreciate your attention to what we're trying to do kind of really early on here, and your feedback on how we can do it best in our own backyard here in Michigan, but also with our university partners all over the US.